Good evening once again. My name is Richard Esterly, and tonight is week number 11, which is the final week of our Bible study entitled The Road to Emmaus, Finding Jesus in the Old Testament. This Bible study is an outreach of Koinonia Church based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. These prior 10 weeks, we've been studying Old Testament scriptures that foreshadow Christ. These are called types or shadows. And those are terms that are found in the New Testament and are used to describe them. We have also been studying specific prophecies that precisely foretell the life of Christ at his first coming. Let's look at the foundational scripture for this study one more time. I know we've looked at it every week, and I'm guessing that after 11 weeks of this, you'll probably never forget this scripture. And that's a good thing. That's partially intentional. So let me pull this scripture up from Luke, the last chapter in the book of Luke, Luke 24, 25 through 27. And he, Jesus, said to them, "O foolish ones and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. So he was going back to the Old Testament. That's all they had was the Old Testament. He was going back to them and showing himself in the Old Testament. A little further on, Luke 24, 25 through 27, when he, again, this is Jesus, was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were open, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scripture to us?" My sincere hope and prayer after these 10, 11 weeks is that your eyes have indeed been opened. Not just your mind, but your spiritual eyes have been opened, just like the eyes of these two men on the road to Emmaus were open. I hope that you now more fully recognize Jesus in the Old Testament and see him fulfilled in the New Testament. I hope that your hearts are burning with this newfound understanding of the foretelling of the Messiah, the Christ, and how Old Testament writers wrote of him hundreds of years before he was even alive. As I've mentioned many times, there are hundreds and hundreds of these types and shadows, and hundreds as well of prophecies found in the Old Testament that were fulfilled in the life of Jesus Christ. We've only been able to look at maybe 10, 15% of all of them in this study. There's so many more. For the honest seeker of truth, these fulfilled shadows and prophecies prove that the scriptures were inspired by someone outside the realm of time and space. That can only be our Creator, the one true God, the God of the Jewish faith and the Christian faith. I found a succinct and powerful article on this truth that further elaborates some of the probability statements that we discussed in lesson 1. This is all from a ministry called Empower International. I found it online, and I thought that this article expressed so well some of these ideas surrounding the probability of scripture and the fact that prophecy proves that there's somebody from outside the realm of time and space inspired the scriptures. So let's take a look at this. The reason why prophecy is an indication of the divine authorship of the scriptures, and hence a testimony to the trustworthiness of the message of the scriptures, is because of the minute probability of fulfillment. So let me read that again. The reason why prophecy is an indication of the divine authorship of the scriptures, and hence a testimony to the trustworthiness of the message of the scriptures, that is the plan of salvation that God's provided every person ever to live on the earth, is because of the minute probability of fulfillment. Anyone can make predictions. Having those prophecies fulfilled is vastly different. In fact, the more statements made about the future and the more detail, then the less likely the precise fulfillment will be. For example, what's the likelihood of a person predicting today the exact city in which the birth of a future leader would take place well into the 22nd century? This is indeed what the prophet Micah did 700 years before the Messiah. And it wasn't even the hometown of the parents at that time. Further, what is the likelihood of predicting the precise manner of death that a new, unknown religious leader would experience 1,000 years from now? A manner of death presently unknown, when some of the prophecies about Jesus dying by crucifixion, dying on a cross, were made, crucifixion hadn't even been invented yet. So it says a manner of death presently unknown and to remain unknown for hundreds of years. Yet this is what David did in 1000 BC. Again, what is the likelihood of predicting the specific date of the appearance of some great future leader, hundreds of years in advance? This is what Daniel did 530 years before Christ. We looked at this. Continuing on in this article, again, I just think it does such a great job of expressing some of these thoughts. The science of probability attempts to determine the chance that a given event will occur. A professor at Westmont College has calculated the probability of one man fulfilling the major prophecies, just 8 prophecies in this case, we'll start with, made concerning the Messiah. The estimates were worked out by 12 different classes representing some 600 university students. The students carefully weighed all the factors, discussed each prophecy at length, and examined the various circumstances which might indicate that men had conspired together to fulfill a particular prophecy. So this was a very comprehensive study done at Westmont College, and we touched on this in the very first lesson. Continuing on, they made their estimates conservative enough so that there was finally unanimous agreement, even among the most skeptical students. However, the professor then took their estimates and made them even more conservative. He also encouraged other skeptics or scientists to make their own estimates to see if his conclusions were more than fair. Finally, he submitted his figures to review to a committee of the American Scientific Affiliation. Upon examination, they verified that his calculations were dependable and accurate in regard to the scientific material presented. After examining only 8 different prophecies, again, 8 prophecies, not all the prophecies, they conservatively estimated that the chance of one man fulfilling all 8 prophecies was 1 in 10 to the 17th power. To illustrate how large the number 10 to the 17th is, a figure with 17 zeros, the professor gave the following illustration. And this is what we looked at in the first of the series on this in this Bible study. Suppose that we take 10 to the 17th power silver dollars and lay them on the face of Texas. They'll cover all of the state 2 feet deep. Now mark one of these silver dollars and stir the whole mass thoroughly, all over the state. Then blindfold a man and tell him he can travel as far as he wishes, but he must pick up the one silver dollar that has the special mark on it. What chance would he have of getting the right one? Very, very small. Just the same chance that the prophets, this is just the same chance that the prophets would have had of writing these 8 prophecies and having them all come true in any one man from their day to the present time. From these figures, the professor concludes the fulfillment of these 8 prophecies alone proves that God inspired the writing of the prophecies. The likelihood of mere chance is only 1 in 10 to the 17th power. Another way of saying this is that any person who minimizes or ignores the significance of the biblical identifying signs concerning the Messiah would be foolish. But of course, there are many more than 8 prophecies. As we mentioned before, there's hundreds of them. In another calculation, the professor used 48 prophecies, even though he could have used Edersheim's 456. Edersheim is a Bible scholar that found 456 prophecies. These were prophecies that Jewish scholars said were messianic prophecies, and he found them fulfilled in the New Testament. So he came up with 456, but we're only going to look at 48 in the second example, and arrived at the extremely conservative estimate that the probability of 48 prophecies being fulfilled in one person is the incredible number of 10 to the 157th power. How large is 10 to the 157th power? 10 to the 157th power contains 157 zeros. That's a lot of zeros. The professor gives an illustration of this number using electrons. Electrons are, of course, very small objects. They're smaller than atoms. It would take 2.5 times 10 to the 15th power of them laid side by side to make 1 inch. Even if we counted 250 of these electrons each minute and counted day and night 24/7, it would still take 19 million years just to count a line of electrons 1 inch long. We'll continue on. With this introduction, let's go back to our chance of 1 in 10 to the 157th power. Let's suppose we're taking this number of electrons, marking one and thoroughly stirring it into the whole mass, then blindfolding a man and letting him try to find the right one. What chance has he of finding the right one? What kind of pile will this number of electrons make? They make an inconceivably large volume. As the professor concludes, any man who rejects Christ as the Son of God is rejecting a fact proved perhaps more absolutely than any other fact in the world. Let's listen to that again. The professor concluded, any man who rejects Christ as the Son of God is rejecting a fact proved perhaps more absolutely than any other fact in history. So there you have it. We've looked at all these prophecies and types and shadows. And again, we've only looked at maybe 10 or 15% of the total. It might even be a little smaller than that. So I'm hoping that you have seen Jesus in the Old Testament. I'm hoping that you have seen him fulfilled in the New Testament. And the fact that these writers wrote of him in types and shadows and in prophecies, and that they became and they were fulfilled very precisely by Jesus when he walked the earth. I'm hoping that that cements your faith. Christianity isn't just pie in the sky. It is a faith that has been looked at and examined by many, many people. There's quite a few people that have set out to prove the Bible wrong and have become believers in the course of trying to prove it wrong. So I hope your faith has been reaffirmed. I hope it goes deeper than ever. I hope this study's been an inspiration and a blessing to you. I've certainly learned a lot myself. So I thank you for spending the time with me these last 11 weeks. Lastly, as I mentioned, this is an outreach of Koinonia Church, and we would love to have you visit our church some Sunday if you would like. We meet every Sunday at 10 a.m., and the address is here, 10405 Comanche Road. That's on Comanche, a little east of Morris. And you can visit our website, www.koinonia/abq.com. So we'd love to see you. Again, thank you for your time these last 11 weeks, and God bless you.